Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast at the Edinburgh Fringe and beyond. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and if you take the letters of my name and rearrange them as an anagram, it will spell musical theatre journalistic genius. But you do have to take some of the letters out and add quite a lot in. Now, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe for 2015 has finished. It's always a great sadness when that's the case, but many of the shows that we're going to be talking about in the next few weeks here on Musical Talk have had such quality that they are going on to other places and other theatres, and we'll try and keep you up to date and abreast of those as they happen. And it's wonderful for me to be able to say, actually, one of my favourite shows at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe this year has already come to London, because the marvellous musical Ushers, the front of house musical, has made its way to the Arts Theatre and is opening for a run of about 6 weeks from the 9th of September, which is this week, all the way through to the 18th of October. And that's at the Arts Theatre, which is right next to Leicester Square Tube Station. You really can't miss it. It's right in the heart of London, and it's a wonderful, intimate theatre, almost perfect for a show like Ushers. Now, some of you might be thinking, hang on a minute, Ushers, we've heard of that. That's been running around for a little bit of time so far. And you're absolutely right. Ushers, the front of house musical as it's called, with music by Yannis Koutsakis, lyrics by James Oban and a book by James Rotger, originally premiered on the 3rd of December 2013 at the King's Head Theatre, also known as the Hope Theatre, as you'll hear in this following interview, then transferred to the Charing Cross Theatre, and then with a new cast made its way to Edinburgh, to the Momentum venue in the new town. A fantastic church venue, as it happens, which, funnily enough, fitted the piece almost perfectly. It ran in Edinburgh between the 5th and the 30th of August, and it was one of the few shows that I like so much, I saw it twice. And don't just take my word for it, a friend of mine, who was also up there in Edinburgh, saw it twice as well. In fact, he left another show halfway through in order to get to see it a second time. The wonderful thing about Ushers is, if you know nothing about musical theatre or theatre in general, you'd still get something out of it. But if you're someone who likes musical theatre, and frankly, if you're listening to this podcast, I think you probably do, which of course makes you a genius, frankly, and an upstanding citizen, and someone highly respectable, then you'll get a lot more out of it. You don't have to be, speech marks, stagey, close speech marks, to enjoy it, but it certainly helps if you are, or at least have some kind of sensibility for it. And the show is a musical comedy, but it's a musical comedy with a great deal of heart right in the soul, and it's very contemporary as well, as we'll find out in the following discussion. I really enjoyed the show, as I've said, and so after seeing it the first time, I caught up with Max Reynolds, the director. He was the director of it when it first started in 2013, and he's stayed with the production ever since. And he's a very interesting man with a lot to say and a lot of involvement in the creative process of this wonderful musical. So, without further ado, and as they used to say, rather a lot of nothing, let's listen to my conversation with Max, the director of Ushers, the front of house musical, and then afterwards I'll tell you how you can see it in London. Musical Talk.
Hello, my name is Max Reynolds. I'm the director of Ushers, the front of house musical, which is currently on at St Stephen's venue in Edinburgh Fringe.
Now, Ushers the musical is a name that will be known to many listeners of Musical Talk because it has had a bit of a life before it came to Edinburgh. It was certainly on in London in 2014 and is one of those shows that people are talking about but possibly don't know very much about. So let's set the scene. What is a show about? And then we'll talk about its gestation period and how it's developed from a lovely little baby into a fantastic mature piece, shall we say.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, so the show is, as you might get from the title, about people that work front of house. So it's a group of ushers, and the show follows the evening of one of their shifts. So we meet the array of characters that already work in front of house at our fictional venue with a fictional show.
And a fictional theatrical company behind it.
Exactly, yes. And the new girl called Lucy, she arrives, it's her first shift. So the evening follows that as the main story. And obviously there's other little stories interlinked throughout as well.
And for people who may not realise this, and it seems self-evident, but it really isn't widely known, when you see ushers in a theatre, particularly a West End theatre or a big provincial theatre, they are quite often actors who are not currently engaged. Because obviously it's convenient for the theatre to be able to take people like that on, and also it's convenient for those actors to be able to give up work at short notice to do a show if they get a show, and then come back and things like that. So quite often ushers are in the profession.
Absolutely,
which
yes.
gives it that lovely element of, these are actors who'd like to be actors but are not at this moment acting.
Exactly, yes. A lot of the musical comedy comes from how much these ushers don't really want to be ushers. They love the world, they love being involved in the theatrical world, but actually they want to be the performers and
on
not
the stage.
Yes, on the stage rather than the front of house team.
Now, we did just mention that actually this is not a fresh show for Edinburgh, although it's a fantastic, fresh and new writing. It is new writing in the sense of it's only been created in the last couple of years. But you, Max, you've been involved in it since very nearly the first idea, I think. So tell me, how did you come on board as director?
So all via Twitter, actually. It all came around via there. I was on Twitter one day and saw the @Ushers Musical Twitter account and thought that sounds like a fantastic idea, would love to be involved. Obviously I saw that it was a musical and comedy new writing, which for me just ticks all the boxes. So I tweeted them and said, this sounds great. Do you have a director attached? Because if you don't, I would love to be considered. Here are my details. Luckily, they didn't have anyone. At the time, they'd only just written a couple of songs, so they hadn't really had any book at all, just a couple of demo tracks.
And when was this, essentially? 2013?
Yeah, beginning of 2013, yeah. So it was very much in its basic stage at that point. So they had a couple of songs, which they then put into, West End producer did a search for a Twitter composer, and they put a couple of the songs in, they recorded them, and did really well, got all the way to the final. That's when I came on board, and for the final we had to direct or put together a 20-minute showcase of the show.
Oh, right, okay.
So there was 5 other musicals involved in the final, and they had a panel of judges, and so each musical did their little section.
There could be a TV programme in this.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, so we all had our own little section. That's when I came in. I directed a couple of the scenes and the songs, and kind of linked it in a mini version of Ushers.
Yeah.
And from there it got picked up. We did our first production at the end of 2013 at the Hope in Islington.
It's interesting that you've used the word Twitter all the way through this. This really is a modern musical in that sense, isn't it?
Yes.
This is not how musicals have been historically made.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that the world of the social networks is really changing everything, but including theatre, which can be quite a traditional profession in many ways.
No, absolutely. A lot has come through Twitter, actually. Obviously, the search for a Twitter composer is actually the platform that launched Ushers to its current life, and the original singers they got in for the demos were all found via Twitter as well. Yeah, so we do have a little bit of a following on Twitter, and I know the team are really great at using Twitter to promote the show. So yes, it's been very key for this production.
I'm really interested what you say about the fact that actually when you sort of came on board the ship, there were just a couple of songs and you all worked together to make this sort of 20-minute taster version, if you like, of it. I mean, how much were you involved in, was it being workshopped?
Yeah, I mean...
Because the director's role is truly important, as is the creatives in terms of the writers and the book writers and the composers and things. But actually theatre is such a wonderful collaborative profession. Tell me how your fingers are in that pie.
Yeah, so this whole process has been really interesting, and it really has been a very collaborative project, actually. When a mini workshop was the search for a composer, where we did a little bit of the material and tested out what works in front of a small audience, and then we gauged from the audience response, went in that direction. Then our production at the Hope was essentially our first workshop performance of it. So we had a couple of weeks rehearsals where the script on the day one wasn't finished. No. But it was great because every day we were getting new rewrites, new scenes, new songs added in.
Which means you were there at the point of creation, actually,
yeah.
Which is a really good point to be on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, that was probably the best way for it, because we all got a say in where it should go. And then as we were running the show, we were changing stuff during the day based on what was working and what wasn't working. So yeah, it really was quite an organic process, actually, and the cast, our original cast at the Hope, were very involved in the characterisation and where the comedy was all coming from. And we had a fantastic cast there, and they've been so instrumental in developing this piece to where it is now. And James Rocker, the book writer, has been fantastic. He's been so open to new ideas and takes on
he's
his
a
work.
good, flexible writer.
He is brilliant,
That goes
yeah.
such a long way, though, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So it's been a joy to work with him, and James O'Bannon and Yanis, who wrote the music and lyrics, have also been so open to ideas and rewrites and changes. So it's been a really great process.
And everyone's chipping in to make it better and better and
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the great thing is that we're all there because we care about the show,
Yes.
and we see its potential, and we love being involved. Yes, so we had lots of rewrites at the Hope, and then when we got offered Charing Cross from there onwards, that was a couple of months later. So we had a couple of months to digest what happened at the Hope, rewrite, change some bits. Unfortunately, a couple of the cast from the Hope had other work, so we had to re-audition, which again was great because then we got some new takes on some of the characters and some fresh
It does
ideas.
give a different dynamic, doesn't it? Every
Absolutely,
cast brings
yeah.
something different.
Completely, yeah. And because there are only 6 in the cast, every character is so key in the show, and they all have their moments. So even with this cast, which is a brand new cast from what the London cast last year, totally new, and they've all brought new ideas, which has been really exciting for us creatives, because little things that we may not have thought about before have suddenly now come into play.
Well, it is, isn't it? And also, you can read lines in so many different ways, and sometimes you can find something in a line, or someone can find something in a line which no one else has seen.
Oh, absolutely, and we had quite a lot of that with this cast, which has been really great. Yeah, new ways of delivering it, which we didn't even think, or new little comedy beats, little moments.
And everyone brings new physicality to a role as well.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
There are lots of lovely physical moments in this. Well, certainly in the Edinburgh run, if I may say.
Yeah.
I mean, without spoiling it, there's a truly fantastic moment when focus is pulled. I think it has to be said, when someone ends up in a rubbish bin.
Absolutely, that's new for Edinburgh.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That is brilliant because, as I say, there's something else going on stage which is germane to the plot, and people are looking at it because it's important and it's meaningful and it's touching, and then suddenly, huge legs sticking out of a bin.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's always been one of the things that we want to do with Ushers is 1 minute you're involved in this story, and then something will dramatically change, and then we've got another comedy character on or another comedy moment. So it really is a bit of a roller coaster
It's
up and down.
swerveball comedy,
Absolutely.
or screwball comedy, perhaps.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
To use a phrase which has some heritage.
Yeah.
Let's talk back about the development again, though. So, someone who saw the show in Edinburgh now would and had seen the show in the Hope Theatre in Islington, the shorter version, would they say this is clearly the same show, or has it markedly changed?
I think it's changed a lot since the Hope. I mean, the general structure is obviously the same. The fake world that the show is set in has always been that from the Hope.
The context is unchanged.
Yes. Obviously, the cast is so different that you would essentially think it is a different show based on that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the songs from the Hope have remained. Some brand new, some we cut from the Hope.
And it was only a short version in the Hope, wasn't it, as well? So.
Yeah, it wasn't that long actually. So we have developed the material since then. Up here we play it without the interval, which works. At Charing Cross we did have the interval involved.
But it doesn't outstay its welcome in any way. It's almost the perfect size. Certainly, I saw it in Edinburgh, which is where there was no interval. But actually, there was no point when you thought I'd like to stop for an ice cream or to draw breath. You just actually go through all the way through, and it sustains itself perfectly. There is this kind of rhythm and dynamic to it, which in some ways might actually be harmed by an interval. So I really like the fact that it builds and builds and builds and builds. So tell me about Charing Cross, because you've been involved in it all the way through. Mm-hmm. That's quite daunting, isn't it? Because that is a London theatre, a central London theatre. It often leads on to greater and wonderful things, as is happening here in Edinburgh. So did you feel daunted that a new show was now, a full show was required, and you were having to start not from scratch, but there is, the next stage of development with your collaborative colleagues? Or were you thinking, actually, I already know the ins and outs of this, so everything else is just moving the furniture?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really exciting for Charing Cross because we all saw the potential at the Hope and wanted it to sort of go further and see where it would end up. Yeah, it was exciting. It was scary at the same time because new writing, again, it's like, bigger venue, you just don't know how it's going to be
and
received.
what the clientele is going to be.
Exactly, yes. And also at the Hope we did your sort of normal show schedule, whereas Charing Cross, first time round, we did late night shows. So we were specifically targeting your stagey crowd who may have just finished watching a show on the West End and might want a little bit of comedy for the evening, and also indeed people that actually work in the theatre business. So your ushers and your actors
Yes.
finish the show, come on down to Charing Cross and have a little laugh as we take fun, make fun of all things musical theatre.
And it does. It's beautiful in that sense. You can either be an absolute, as you say, stagey is the word. I think you can either be immersed in musical theatre and get a lot out of it, but actually you can approach it without knowing anything except theatre exists and still get a huge amount out of it. So it's not. There are jokes, but they are not necessarily in-jokes, and that stops it being exclusive. It's a very much inclusive piece, or so it seems to me.
Yeah, I agree, and a lot of the characters are stereotypes, or some of the stories are based on stereotype stories, so I certainly think you don't necessarily
But
have
there's
to
a truth in a stereotype, isn't there?
Absolutely, that's one thing we've always wanted, is the characters are real in this world. So we never break the fourth wall and do like a sort of a tongue-in-cheek wink at the audience. They are living in this over-the-top world, which theatre is, and we have these crazy characters, and we have some really beautiful, truthful characters thrown in as well. So I agree. I don't think it's necessarily, if you don't know much about theatre, I still think you would get a lot from the show, then, as well as all the little in-jokes that we also have.
Not so much in jokes, I think nods to the theatre.
Yes.
Might be a slightly better word, but if you don't mind me.
Yes, of course. No, please rephrase that.
Now, so Charing Cross was a success, and it was advertised on the Tube, which is where I first, it sort of hoved into view for me as I went up an escalator somewhere, and I thought,
Yes,
oh, hello,
yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
and it passes, and you think, what's that? And I didn't catch up with it in London, regrettably, but it was well received in London.
It was, yeah. It's sort of far better than what we thought, really, which has been the general case for this.
It really
this
does
show.
have legs, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we had great reviews, which then we extended at Charing Cross. We did 6 weeks of late night shows, and then we did a 4-week run of the main house show. Yes, so Charing Cross was great.
Well, here's a question for you, if you don't mind me asking. We were talking about this heightened reality situation, and it's a heightened environment. It must be quite interesting, or quite difficult perhaps, a challenge, to work out how to get that tone right, where people are clearly enjoying themselves and it's boisterous without being off-putting, it's not too much, it's just right, and at the same time retaining the truth of the characters, and we'll talk about the love interest in a minute, because actually it's a very important part of the story. How do you find that pitch? Because it seems to me it's such a... When you get it right, it pays off the dividends. But if you miss it, then you're going to falter in one direction or the other.
Yes, no, absolutely.
And I'm looking to you as a director for an answer.
I mean, I think the book, where it is now, it's fantastic, and James has done a really great job in going from these crazy moments into something quite heartfelt and truthful. And I think that's where great writing comes into play. It's the same with any sitcom, I think. Things like Only Fools and Horses and Friends, all those shows work so well because one minute you are crying with laughter, and then all of a sudden the tables turn and actually you're so involved in the emotion of the piece and almost crying at the heartfelt story.
There is melancholy in comedy, isn't there?
Yeah,
or good
absolutely,
comedy, yes.
yeah.
And that's from character, though, isn't it? That's why.
Completely, yeah.
It's not just a series of gags.
Yes,
Although,
no, absolutely.
gags don't hurt.
No, absolutely. So part of the rehearsal process is pitching it in the right way so that we do go from those almost extremes and that they are put in the right moments. Because it's definitely a fine line. We can go too big and then it becomes too crazy, and then we can also go too small and then also miss these moments because they're so inward. So it's definitely a fine line between the two. And so much of that is gauged on the audience response as well. Every audience is different every night, and they laugh at different things and at different moments. So. Yeah, I mean, if you could easily see the show a couple of times and get a different reaction and reading from it.
So, well, let me ask you the question: what have the audiences taught you as a director? Because forgive me, if they will see exactly as you say, they will see things which you didn't realise were there, or that you've only sort of blatantly put in.
Yeah, completely. I mean, as I said, it's a new cast, so we have brought in new ideas and new little moments. And part of that is to see what the response is and if that works. So a couple of things have developed since being in Edinburgh where you felt there was a laugh or there, and we thought actually, well, maybe we should play on this a little bit more and make it a moment. And then all of a sudden we're getting big laughs from these moments which weren't in rehearsals. one of the key things that we do as part of the rehearsal process for Ushers is towards the end, we actually invite a small audience in to come and watch a run through.
That's a very sensible thing to do.
I think so. I mean, particularly as the Ushers are the Ushers for the show, a lot of the story is set up from the moment you enter the auditorium, which only comes with actually meeting strangers. I mean, there's only so much myself and the choreographer can do, pretend to be sort of fake audience members. So yeah, we had a little invited run through in London before we came up here, and that was really beneficial because the cast knew where the laughs were coming and where they weren't, and also just to start the ball rolling on that interaction with the audience, which has been an ongoing process since Edinburgh. And as I say, every night is different, and it's quite a large space that we're in, so you can get any sort of number of people turn up on the day, and just being able to manage that last night, which you saw, we had quite a huge crowd.
It was enormous and really up for it.
Up for a crowd, which is great.
My word, it was wonderful.
Just what you want. I mean, that's exactly what the show requires, I think, that kind of audience. So all of a sudden the cast were managing this huge crowd on the incoming and dealing with all this big response. Last night was great.
It is actually good. As an audience member, you come into the auditorium and you are greeted by people who look like ushers and are acting like ushers. If you're sharp-witted, you'll notice that they have radio mics on, which I think is the only obvious clue. And there is this kind of sort of over-the-top manager character who's a very significant part of the plot as well. So he's also on the floor, as would happen sometimes. You know, I've seen that more in cinemas, actually, funnily enough, where the manager wants to walk around showing off his keys.
Yes.
Look how important I am.
Absolutely, yes.
There. But that was wonderful. Have your cast actually ever been asked anything unusual by a member of the public who thinks that they are proper ushers? Because many people do, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we always wanted to do is for the ushers to usher the incoming, usher you into the seats, and then the lights go out and then the lights come back on and they're suddenly singing at you. And we've always wanted to play on this whole idea that you don't know that they're the cast, essentially. So we really try and keep it as truthful as possible with them being ushers, so that you automatically believe that they're the ushers. I'm sure we've had funny questions come up in the past, and just your general normal questions that you would ask an usher, which for them definitely helps set the scene, which is great.
Well, I must tell you, I did overhear last night that one of your colleagues on the stage who was playing Usher had said afterwards, he was talking to somebody, that somebody had asked him to book him. Someone had asked him to book a cab for them, which I wouldn't even ask. I wouldn't think of using or asking an usher to do that in the theatre anyway. But I thought that was very interesting. So obviously, full marks for being convincing there.
Great.
This Edinburgh show is fantastic. This Edinburgh production. And you're still connected as director, which is fantastic. I mean, you really have seen it through all its iterations. Did you come to Edinburgh with a view of doing it differently? Or, I mean, you said you've explored different things and each cast brings something else, but did you as a director think, right, I've tried it this way, I'm going to try it that way? You know, what was your vision?
Well, so much of it developed during The Hope and Charing Cross, and I feel like we have arrived at a far more settled version of the show now. Again, the danger is if you then start playing around with it too much, you then lose some of the charm and the magic that has been created over the last couple of years. So we wanted to keep it fairly identical to the last production in London. One of the main things that has changed is we have added far more choreography in than before. When we originally auditioned, we were looking for actors and singers, and then the choreography has developed over the last couple of years, and we've always wanted to do this big finale, which I won't say too much about because I don't want to give away the surprise.
But it's worth staying for.
So the finale is essentially a new finale for the show. We had something similar at Charing Cross, but not as big as what we have up here.
It's a valedictory finale, really, isn't it? It really is. Without ruining anything, you know, if you were looking for a showcase, that's what you get.
Absolutely, yeah. We wanted to end on a big high. We have this really fun show with these lovely little moments, and then we just needed something big to send you on your way.
It's the After Eight mint.
Yes, absolutely. And so that was something that was created in this rehearsal process, and the music was different from what we had before. And we have a fantastic cast up here.
You do.
And when we went to audition, we specifically were looking for triple threat performers who could just do everything: comedy, the heartfelt acting, great vocals, and dancers.
And can move,
and we were so lucky we found this cast, because they have been an absolute joy to work with anyway. They're so lovely off stage. And they all just get on so well, which I think is essential for this piece. And
well, I think they came across, because I think the audience were reading that, but there was a genuine camaraderie amongst your cast on stage, because obviously they're playing a group of people who have been together, which is not, it's a parallel with any theatrical production. A group of actors are thrown together for a period of time. And you did say that acting is an important part of it. It is. One of the lovely things about this show, and you said there were all these different plot strands, but one of the ones that's the most emotional, if you can describe it that way, is the love relationship, which is a relationship under strain, and how that's going to develop and resolve or not. But it's a gay relationship, and that is lovely. It isn't often done. It's not done nearly enough. But it's entirely... Well, it came across entirely plausibly. It's also almost entirely immaterial. It's a gay relationship, because it's about the relationship, and the audience, I think, took it that way, absolutely. But did you think this is actually something a little bit brave as well, at any stage?
Well, actually,
or is it now so?
No. Well, at the time, that relationship was meant to be the Stephen and Lucy couple, and then that changed. There's in one of the moments of the show, there's one of the ushers gives this lovely monologue about the truth of being an usher, and that in the original format wasn't his character at all. It was the female character.
Oh right, okay.
So that got developed over the rewrites. We wanted to show a sort of a truthful side to work in front of house. You get the big over the top world, which theatre generally is, and we love
the glitter.
The glitter, yes. But amongst all that is heart there, and that's explored in that relationship.
It certainly is.
And I don't think at the time we did it as necessarily like a shock factor. Sort of working in theatre and being involved in theatre, obviously, you get a lot of gay people.
It's a very liberal environment, of course.
Absolutely,
absolutely.
So when we were working on it, we never thought this is going to be a sort of controversial issue at all. We just wanted to show something that's a bit truthful, really. And we never wanted to go too stereotyped with that either, because again, it just wouldn't be the right pitch for it. And I know, working in theatre, so many couples that have this dilemma of someone gets a job working abroad for a year contract on a cruise or whatever, and they have this decision of, do they do a long-term relationship? They're suddenly thrown into this situation. Do they want to stay with their partner, or do they want to go and do what they've been training for and they love doing, and work as they want to be working, but then it means leaving their partner for a year, sometimes longer.
Acting life is a hard life.
It is,
what the papers say.
Yes, and even touring is tough as well. Even if you're in the UK but still touring around, it certainly does add strains to relationships. So we definitely, during the rewrites, wanted to look at that side of the theatre industry and explore that. Which I think the two guys do beautifully in this production, as the previous cast have done it as well.
Rory and Ben play,
that's right,
unhelpfully, Ben and Gary, but the one called Ben isn't playing Ben.
Yes, that was slightly confusing in rehearsals for a couple of days. And I think James Rotger has done a lovely job of intertwining that story throughout the show and given it so much heart.
But as you said, it's not controversial. It clearly wasn't intended to be controversial. It is just lovely that it is what it is.
Yes.
And it makes no difference. But also it gives the show a great deal of heart.
Yes.
But I just wondered if anyone had made the observation that it just isn't very common on stage, even today. To see a central gay couple.
I've not heard anything from that at all, so I don't know what the general sort of feedback is. I guess now we just sort of take it for the norm, which is great. It's how it should be, and I'm so glad.
We are in 21st century Britain.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And I'm so glad. America have also joined with us with gay marriage and equal rights and things. So
right
for me, it's never sort of jumped out as being something that shouldn't be there, and actually it's quite nice that is the norm, and we just accept that now. So,
well, I do like, because there is another relationship in there, which is, as you say, the Lucy-Stephen relationship, and that's a heterosexual relationship. But interestingly, and this is not to underplay it, because it pays off, But it is almost the second comedy couple, which is a traditional musical theatre trope, of course, which might have been more traditionally the gay couple in those, from a few years ago.
Yes, yeah.
You'd have them there, but they'd be the funny ones with the withering put-downs or whatever it is you were going to do with them. But what's lovely is every time these two couples sort of bump into each other, there's this sort of sudden darkness, except for the spotlight on their faces and a ding. And the audience loved it every time, because also every time they're trying to get together, as it were, or to talk even, something comes along and separates them. So they have this kind of sort of comic role, whilst at the same time being quite legitimately, it's not a send-up. It's they are genuinely interested in each other. So that's lovely too.
I really like that relationship. It always puts a smile on my face. And again, the reason why I think it works, we obviously play on this, the cheesy musical theatre lovers who meet at first sight and fall in love. But also, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where you meet someone new for the first time and there's that moment of connection there. Chemistry, absolutely. So that's what we've played on. And also, when they're not in this sort of love ting world, which is what we call it. Yes. Their dialogues are sometimes awkward as they're trying to get to know each other, and they're trying to be sort of flirty and cheeky, but it comes out the wrong way, and they both have these awkward lines that they keep coming up with, and then find themselves in these awkward situations, which I'm sure we've all been.
Of course.
Which I think it just lands every time because it's so relatable, that story.
There's lots of lovely comedy moments in that which are not overplayed, and because they are not overplayed, there's a lovely moment, I think, when Stephen bends over to pick something up and Lucy basically has a very good look at his eyes.
Yes.
And is caught doing so, I think, as
yes.
well. So there's a... but it's not... whack whack kind of comedy, if I can describe it that way. It is. It's actually the comedy of social embarrassment, as well as natural reactions in the social context, which wouldn't encourage that. So that's lovely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We wanted as many of those awkward moments where you meet someone for the first time who you have feelings for, and there's that kind of awkward flirting going on. We had lots of fun sort of finding those little moments.
You give Stephen lots of embarrassing moments because his best friend is Ben, who's one of the gay couple, of course. So, there's a certain amount of mock gay banter as well there. So
absolutely, yeah.
And then, of course, you have Rosie, who is the actress you have is a physical comedienne of some renown, in my view.
She's brilliant.
She knows how to work it.
She does.
She comes in and she owns that character absolutely, and it is important to the resolution of the plot as well. Something that it's lovely. There's this kind of sort of throwaway aspect to her character, which is almost a comic incidental, and then that plays off. I love that character, and of course she is great at just walking on getting laughs. In some ways, she's not connected to anyone, and therefore she's her own character all the way through with her own ambitions, and therefore plays with a different dynamic as well. But I like the fact that interplays, because they're all clearly friends, even if she's a bit over the top as a friend.
Yes.
I mean, that's quite difficult to pitch as well. Was that in the writing, or was that developed? Or it would have always been in the writing.
Actually,
how have you developed that?
That character in particular has developed loads since the first production of Ushers. And again, some of that was writing, some of that was just finding this character and playing. We had a brilliant actress at the Hope who played Rosie. Who essentially started the ball rolling on where this character was going, and then sort of based on audience reactions and the new rewrites and the direction of where we wanted that to go, that character has evolved dramatically into the Rosie that you see today. We had Keris, who played it in London, who was also absolutely brilliant and very instrumental in creating some of those moments.
Yes.
Which
and they are moments.
They are, yes. Who was great to work with, and so a lot of that has carried on. And now we have Alex Parks playing the role of Rosie, who again is new. She's just graduated from drum school.
Is she?
Yes.
Ooh, right.
Yeah.
You surprised me with that. She feels like an old hand.
Absolutely no. I always forget that she's just graduated as well, because she's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
she's nailed that.
Yeah. And she's again a fresh take on the character with the stuff, the material that's worked before, has then taken that even further and put her own ideas in as well. So the bin thing is something that developed in rehearsals into a moment. She's brilliant, and we've all loved working with Alex in creating the Rosie that you see here in Edinburgh.
It is fantastic. I'm laughing even just thinking about some of the things that she does, and I think it's so lovely, that character, because she isn't an elegant character, I think would be the nicest way of saying it. She's a big, not boisterous, but full of energy kind
Yes.
of person, but it's because she is indefatigable. When she puts her mind to something, whether or not you think she's going to be able to do it, she does it.
Absolutely.
And that's true all the way through as well. And funny enough, because it might be an embarrassing or interesting or comic route to get to that point, you root for all the way, and there's a real sympathy in the room for her.
Yeah, we've always said, as the audience, you want to be Rosie's friend.
Yes.
So if you go away wanting to be Rosie's friend, then we know we've done the right job. Because she is a bit wacky and a bit crazy, but her intentions are very clear and very defined, and always with the best intentions. So yeah, if you walk away wanting to be her best friend, then we've done the right thing.
And then we should talk about Robin, who
Of
is
course.
the sleazy, odious manager.
Yes.
Brilliantly performed by your actor.
Yes.
Because that's because he's a horrible man and portrayed as a horrible man, and everything about him is almost skin-crawlingly horrible. And yet, he's full of energy too. You know, he's not a retiring slimeball. He's an aggressively rambustuous slimeball, and in a sense has a kind of charm. Is not the word, but you know what I mean. You don't. He's not someone you hate. He's someone you love
to hate. Yeah,
and there is a difference, isn't there?
Absolutely, and like, same thing. Like we want to hate Robin, but we also want to enjoy when he's on stage, because he has some of these great lines that he comes out with. So you know that when he's on stage, there's going to be some sort of comedy involved. So he's definitely a love to hate character. And before, and certainly last night, people have booed him, and and we kind of embrace that really. I mean, he is on the border of being a panto villain, essentially.
It's not a subtle character in some senses.
So
he's a tin pot tyrant, isn't he? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we love when the audience are behind and booing and getting behind the villain aspect of his character. But again, we also love when he's on stage, because we know that there's going to be some witty moment that's about to come up. And Harry plays him brilliantly, I think.
To perfection, absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you get the impression he does it with relish.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the score, because we haven't actually spoken about the songs at all very much. In a way, there's a touch of... I mean, it's difficult to... I don't want to... By saying someone is like someone else, it's very difficult then to... What I'm not saying is that they're not themselves. However, it feels like a British Kander and Ebb musical in a strange way.
Yes.
It has that oomph to it, which Kander and Ebb have when they're on form. Some of the songs are Kander and Ebbish also in a kind of sort of almost playfully being Kander and Ebbish pastiches in some sense. That's not in any way to undermine the score, which is actually very good. Good, very strong score of very strong songs. But it did leave a Kander and Ebb sort of flavour, and I liked that. Was that deliberate? How would you describe the score?
Yeah, I mean, I think the score for the show is brilliant, and we go from these comedy songs to a lovely ballad, so it really does sort of take you up and down, and within that we play on different styles. So a lot of the show has little nods to other famous musicals.
It does.
So of course we have a bit of a Fosse Chicago number. And then we've got sort of an Noel Coward learning how to be an usher number. So it really does go through different styles. Even the Spend Per Head number starts off with this ominous, slightly operatic, and then it goes into this like Copacabana section. So we certainly play on different musical styles and themes.
I should say.
And then even in Stephen's number, The Parts Like a Play, is obviously talking about the various musical theatre roles that he would love to play. So again, we have little nods or little tunes that come in that you might recognise.
And it's in the choreography as well, isn't it? There's
of course,
one or two poses and positions and
course,
dances.
yes.
Oh, I get the flavour there.
Yes, absolutely, yes. So we do like to have little nods to other material that's so great out there, and as us, you know, we respect that material. So it's an honour for us to give little nods to pieces that we think so much of.
Now, I happen to know, of course, that an old friend of Musical Talk was your musical arranger in the early days of Ushers. That's Michael Riley, the ever lovely Michael Riley, who's currently up here in Edinburgh for the News Review. He's
yes, which I saw the other day and saw Michael in play in News Review, and he's brilliant. Go and see that too.
And he did it last year as well. I remember talking to him last year, and he does so many sort of glissandi at the end of a punchline that by the end of the tour his fingers were bleeding. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he puts his heart and soul and indeed his innards into everything he does. So you obviously work with Michael on the arrangements. Now, arrangements are really important in a success of a song, actually. Also setting the tone. How closely did you work with him in those early days?
Yeah, very close actually. Michael is such a talented pianist, musician, arranger. He's fab.
All-round nice chap as well.
Yeah, he's so lovely to work with. Really have a lot of respect for Michael. And we've worked on classes and worked with students together and stuff as well.
In the wider industry.
Yes, post Ushers. No, he's absolutely brilliant. So the opening number, Welcome, he arranged all the vocal harmony lines so that everyone's on their own harmony, so 6-part harmony.
And it's a good thumping opener as well,
yeah,
isn't
absolutely,
it?
yeah. And he arranged the music for that, and he's done, I think, a fantastic job. And he's been really great working with Yanis in trying to get as much variety in the score as possible. And I think his harmony work is just divine. So the interval number, where they've all got their own little section overlapping, was something that was created between myself, Yanis, and Michael during the initial run at the Hope. For me, it's one of the highlights of the show. Certainly a nod to the your One Day More's, that type of number. And he done a fantastic job in arranging that so that all these tunes manage to somehow overlap each other and blend into this beautiful harmony at the end.
It's fugue, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So he's done a brilliant job on Ushers, and the sound that you hear is a lot of that has come from his initial work on the show. Just under 2 years ago now.
And presumably also, as you were saying, that it's not just the harmonies, although they are. I mean, the harmonies in This Is All I Know, which is sort of the romantic number between Ben and Gary, they're actually facing each other as they sing in harmony with each other, and it's just two of them. And that's a beautiful set of a duologue of harmony, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
But we did touch upon the sort of the pastiche elements, or at least the nods to an homage, as I believe is the other way of putting it will be. And that has to be played up in an arrangement, doesn't it? So
yes, absolutely, yes. Even in some of the underscore moments, we have like a little nods to certain shows and famous songs, which has somehow been interlinked with all the original music composed by Yanis. So Michael's been very instrumental in helping the creation of Ushers to where it is now.
And did he musically direct it originally?
Yes, he did, yeah.
Because unfortunately he's not here now, is he? But you do have another musical director who's very fleet of finger, if I may say.
Oh yes, James Cleaver is brilliant. James actually has done a great job with we have some training videos that pop up throughout the show.
Yes, there's sort of punctuations of comedy, aren't there? Yes, on video.
And James has made the underscore music for those with little nods to certain songs in. So he's done a great job, and James has been lovely to work with as well. And he's been so key. He's in rehearsals for this production has also put his own stamp on some of the music and changed like the odd little rhythm here or the odd little harmony line there as well. So
everything develops, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So he's also been so instrumental in the fresh creation of this version.
How is the audience taking to it here in Edinburgh? We're only a few days in, really, aren't we? First week.
Yes, absolutely. We've had great response. The Twitter goes crazy every night, which is lovely to hear everyone's feedback. And I think up here we've got the perfect audience, because the audience up here are here because they love theatre and they love to go and see shows. So I think Ushers embraces that. So I think we're very lucky that we have the perfect crowd up here. Yes, and the louder they are, the funnier the show is, because the actors feel that. And last night we had a great crowd.
It was a lovely reciprocal feeding circle
last
night.
It was, yes. Yes, I think we've got the perfect audience up here.
And, well, I'm not going to ask how they're enjoying it, because I saw they enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if I hadn't enjoyed it. It is a great piece. It feels sufficiently mature that it's been around for a long time, but of course it hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
That, I think, is a compliment to the piece and a compliment to you. So, your work, do you see your work on this as done? Or
no, not essentially. There might be further life from Ushers after Edinburgh. And that will be going into a different space to what we have in Edinburgh. So if that goes ahead, then we will be in re-rehearsals to tweak some of the blocking and the staging. Again, every time the production has gone on and we've had a cast change, or whether it's that one or two members or a whole cast change like here, the actors, because it is comedy, bring so much more to it than what we've already set. So actually, if we were to do this again, say in a few months' time with a brand new cast, I know that they would bring new ideas, what we don't have. So it always feels fresh to me. This is the 4th production of Ushers in the last 2 years, not including the initial workshop. And every time it's had different takes on it. So as a director, that's always been really exciting, because new cast means fresh ideas. So to take the direction and the choreography and the material that has been set, and then to have someone bring their own flavours is always exciting.
So tell us how people can stay in touch.
Yes, I believe the website is ushersmusical.co.uk. Our Twitter, and we're very proactive on Twitter.
Well, it's been so instrumental in its creation.
Absolutely, yeah. So we really embrace Twitter. Is at Ushers Musical. We're performing at St Stephen's venue, which is one of the Momentum venues up here, Edinburgh.
It's in the new town. It's a lovely venue in the new town.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. Every night, 9:30 p.m. Come along.
And what about you, Max?
Mm-hmm.
What next for you? An actor in demand with a solid gold hit under your belt?
I have a couple of projects lined up for the rest of the year. I'm involved with Avenue Q, which is currently touring the UK. Yes, don't want to say too much at the moment.
Of course.
But yes, hopefully a little bit more life on Ushers after Edinburgh, and a few other productions, including a new play for the winter season.
Oh, good. So you do have a few things, and a nice versatile range as well.
Yes, yeah. I've been so lucky the last couple of years. I've done a very wide variety of pieces, actually. I love musical theatre. I love comedy. That's always going to be my favourites, yes. But I directed this sort of almost classical drama just before coming into Ushers. Totally new.
Chalk and cheese there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Completely new experience, really, but absolutely loved it. And some of the other projects I've got coming up are a right mixture of things, which is, for me, really exciting.
And do you have contact details?
Yes, I do, yes. I have a website. It's maxreynoldscreative.com. I'm also on Twitter as well.
I'm not in any way surprised,
which is Max_Reynolds_.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me about Ushers.
Sure.
Now, Ushers is a 5-star show. There is no doubt about it. I just thought it was fantastic, and I commend everyone to go and see it, both in Edinburgh and beyond, should there be a beyond, which I hope there will be.
Yes, I'm pretty sure there is, but I can't say anything just yet.
No. Let's see what happens.
Yes.
Musical talk. And there we are, the very lovely Max Reynolds. And he was very generous to me. He gave me a lot of his time, and I was so pleased that he did. A lovely man with a lot to say. And I gave 5 stars to that Edinburgh production and called it a modern screwball comedy, fun unbounded, the best night out at the Fringe. And I stand by those words. It was a great show. Very easy to get engaged with, very easy to get enthused by, very, very enjoyable. And as Max alluded at the end of that conversation, there were great hopes that production, i.e. that cast, would be taken somewhere else once the Edinburgh Festival Fringe had closed. And so it has come to pass. Because, as I said at the beginning of this programme, you can see Ushers, the front of house musical, and I think you should, by coming to London, or, if you're already here, by being in London. Those are the 2 options available to you, frankly, at least geographically, because it's on at the Arts Theatre. The Arts Theatre is a lovely small venue, which therefore gives it a great intimacy, right next to Leicester Square. It's there between the 9th of September and the 18th of October. And one of the interesting things is that the performances are all at different times, so have a good look on the website to find one that suits you. The show runs for 80 minutes without an interval, and there are sometimes late evening showings starting at 10:30, which would get you out at 10 to midnight, but you are literally 2 minutes away from Leicester Square tube station, and so you can get home very easily, particularly at the weekend. But there are also daytime performances and early evening performances. So, how do you find out when they are and more about the show? Well, go along to the show's dedicated website, www.ushersmusical.co.uk. The show has been a great success in London already. It was a huge success in Edinburgh, and I'm sure it will be a success again here in London. And as for the cast, there is simply not a wrong note, not a wrong step, not a wrong thought in any of their performances. They impress from first to last, and they are funny, touching, and my goodness, can they also dance. Go along and see Ushers, the front of house musical. Well, my thanks to Max for talking to me about that show, and I'm sure it will do well in London. And don't forget, Musical Talk returns again in a week's time, and over the next few months we'll be having various episodes featuring some of the interviews that I conducted in Edinburgh at the Festival Fringe this year. But we're also breaking them up a bit with other episodes and other topics of conversation, so as not to make it too much of a block. So this year, all our Edinburgh conversation and coverage will be spread out, which will keep the happy memories for those of us who were there this year lingering just that little bit longer, and I hope causing you, if you weren't there, to salivate for a little bit longer so that you might go next year. Let me just plant that idea in your mind. And as things grow best in manure, I know it'll do well because you've got a dirty mind, you naughty listener. Anyway, that's enough for this week, and when it's enough, it's obviously the cue for me to say goodbye. And so, in order to cue me into saying goodbye, I'm going to count down from 3. Here I go. 3, 2, 1. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015. And don't forget to follow us on the usual social networks. We're on Facebook and we're on Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, easy to do so. Just find @MusicalTalkThos.
Yeah, I mean, this whole process has been incredible and so interesting.
By the way, don't worry about too much, but unless someone comes in playing the trombone,
Oh, okay,
it's
fine.
just
Okay.
entertaining background stuff.